Hey everybody, Lair Torrent here, your licensed clinical marriage and family therapist. I talk with people about their relationships across the board, their relationships to themselves, to their partners, to other people, to their families. I also talk about business. I talk to business people about their relationships to their work, entrepreneurs, creators, people who are trying to find their way in their business. I talk with them about their relationship to what it is that they do, because our relationship to our work is an important one. We spend more time typically with the people that we do our work with than perhaps the people we love the most in the world. And it's such an important relationship. I think it needs to be looked at and treated by someone who is an expert in relationships. That happens to be this guy. Today we're going to be talking about your growing edge. I've got a frog in my throat, so if I have to take a couple sips of water, I apologize in advance. But today we're talking about the growing edge, your perilous potential. Perilous because it's scary, potential because there is so much that we can gain from, there's so much treasure to be found in meeting that growing edge. When I think about our growing edge in any area of our lives, let me say it can be anywhere. It can be personally, it can be professionally. We meet these growing edges, these opportunities for learning. And when I think about these opportunities, these growing edges, I think about Joseph Campbell's quote, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek." And I think it's an apt quote when we're talking about finding that growing edge, when we're talking about moving into areas of life or in areas of our profession that cause us to stretch, that there are growing pains, right? I also think about Joseph Campbell's notion of the hero or heroine's journey, as it were. Think of Luke Skywalker. You think of Luke Skywalker. Think of Harry Potter. Think of Rey. Think of any notable person in cinema or in story. We use the archetype of the hero or heroine's journey to sort of highlight this journey that we're going to have to go on. I think it's an apt analogy, right? That often in the archetype of the hero or the heroine, there is this opportunity that's presented and fear immediately takes over. And when fear takes over, usually the heroes in these archetypical stories will balk. They'll say no. And if you think about Luke, when Obi-Wan came to him and said, "You know what? Your destiny doesn't live here. It lives with me out in the stars." Just a few scenes earlier, he was talking about how he wanted to go off and fight the Galactic Empire. And then when he was faced with the opportunity to do just that thing, what did he do? He balked. He said, "No, I can't do that." And it wasn't until his family was killed by the Galactic Empire that he was willing to then go on his hero's journey. Harry, somewhat similar, got the idea that Harry Potter was this magical guy. He thought he was just sort of this boy in the cupboard until he got letter after letter after letter. Couple of magical things were kind of happening, and then a giant kicks open the door and sits on the couch and lights the fire with an umbrella and says, "You're a wizard, Harry." And we get the sense that, okay, maybe there's something special in this growing edge piece for this kid. Rey, something similar. But again, across the board in cinema, we see the idea of the hero's journey. The problem is we don't think about ourselves necessarily as heroes. But I can tell you this, we are heroes in our own journeys, in our own lives. We have to be. And I think it's important that we think about ourselves in that regard, that we consider ourselves to be the heroes and the protagonists within the story that is our lives. Because as we move through our journey, it's important to get those whispers, to get those little pebbles that are hitting our window, and hear the call to the quest, as it were, and to brave the cave. And I said earlier that Joseph Campbell had "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek." It's an important idea, right? The cave, the symbology is so important that when we look at the cave, we note that it's dark, it's fear. There's the unknown, and there is the notion that within this cave holds the treasure that we seek. And I think that's true for so many of the opportunities that get presented to us, where we are inviting shift, where we're inviting change. We are endeavoring to brave that cave, or at least we should. Most of us, most of the time, just like the Lukes and Harrys and Reys of our stories and of our mythology, we will balk. We will miss the first inklings of and whispers, knocks at our window that our lives are speaking to us. And I had something very similar happen to me. It came in the form of a dream. I don't know if any of you out there have experienced this, where you'll have a dream and you're not sure if you're actually awake or if you're dreaming. I don't have many lucid dreams myself. If you do, kudos to you. I'm not one of them, but this was a dream that seemed very real to me at the time. I found myself, as I opened my eyes within the dream, I'm looking down at my feet. I'm on a beach. To my right is the ocean. To my left is the sand in the dunes. I look off into the distance and I see this hill that is going over top of the beach and cresting, going into the water. And within that hillside, I can see a mouth of a cave. And as I walk closer, I feel myself being compelled and pulled toward that cave. And something inside me said, I don't want to go in there. I was fearful of the dark. I could sense that, right? And this is before I'd ever heard of Joseph Campbell or this wonderful quote. But I got closer and closer. And as I got closer and closer to the cave mouth, what I noticed was there's flickering firelight within the cave, and there's somebody in there. I could see shadows dancing on the walls of the cave from outside. And as I found myself being sort of inexplicably pulled into the cave, there was this old man from Central Casting sitting there tending a fire. And when he noticed me, he beckoned me over towards the fire. And what I noticed that was really interesting is he was speaking to me through mental impressions, as if he could read my mind and I could read his. And so he sat me down and then said, "Wait here, I have something for you." And he went to wherever he went and then came back, and he had what looked to be a staff, or it was a walking stick, and it was thicker at one point and pointy at the other end. And on the top, it was lopped off and flat, and it had been sanded down, and there was this what looked to be a squiggly Y carved into the hilt, the butt, if you will, of the walking stick. And I thought to myself in the dream, I thought, what's up with this squiggly Y? And he was sort of frustrated. I was forgetting that he could read my thoughts. And he said, no, this is not a squiggly Y. This is a map. This is the map of your life. And as I looked at the map, he said, you're here. You're supposed to be here. And the difference between these 2 points will be your suffering if you choose to take the journey. And so, this was fortuitous. This was showing me a place I needed to go, but it was a place that I was not prepared to go. You see, the concept of a person's growing edge refers to any area of a person's personal, professional, or creative life where they are actively pushing their boundaries, where they are challenging themselves to grow in some fashion. This edge represents it's the point at which an individual is stepping out of their comfort zone and actively engaging in activities or experiences that foster growth and learning. I like to refer to this as our potential perilous because it is scary, potential because there is so much treasure, there is so much opportunity if we decide to listen to the knocks, to the whispers, to the inner guidance that I think comes with these growing edges, right? Typically, I feel like our lives are speaking to us. In one instance in my life in particular, I was on the set of Law and Order. I was an actor for a number of years. I was on the set. I was playing Officer Mike Cabrera, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. I had just come from hair and makeup. I had been sitting next to Mariska Hargitay, hobnobbing with the stars, as it were, feeling all about myself, feeling like I was somebody in the world. And what I started thinking about my career. I started thinking about my life as an actor. I'm sitting in my trailer now, and I have my name on my trailer. It was all the things that, stroking the ego. And I had a pilot for ABC where I was playing opposite Kira Sedgwick and Beverly D'Angelo. That was fun. I had a play opening up off Broadway, and not too long after that, the head of CBS Talent had called me in to see what I was all about after the pilot. And so I was feeling all about myself. And then all of a sudden, like on the God mic in my head, I heard, this is all just a bunch of bullshit. you know that you don't love acting, and you know that you're not telling stories to help people. You're doing this because your father didn't love you. Not only didn't he love you, but he didn't like you. And I can tell you something, folks, as a practicing therapist and someone who's been through my own version of trauma, that when a parent doesn't love you, it's something. It hurts and it leaves a mark. When a parent doesn't like who you are and actively lets you know that, man, I'll tell you what, that will leave a scar. And that was what I was fighting, was this scar. And I was trying to get my face plastered on any TV or movie screen I could possibly get my face on, so that I could feel like I had become somebody, that I was something, and that I could finally, for once, make my old man see that I was somebody. But on that God mic in my head, I was learning that this was not the place that I needed to be, that the old man in the dream was right. Not only that, I was in the wrong marriage. I was married to the wrong person. Not that she was a wrong person. She was lovely and sweet and kind in all of the ways, and smart and a wonderful person. She was a great girl. She just wasn't my girl. And I knew that. And so the dream was prophetic, I guess is the term. And the dream showed me that I was absolutely in the wrong place. It had taken me years to come to understand that dream was knocking. That dream was a pebble against my window. This was a cycle of lessons unlearned, as I like to call it, right? The cycle of lessons unlearned is these lessons that keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happens, right? If you don't listen to your life when it comes to you, the lessons just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's incumbent upon us to hear the whispers, to hear the little pebble that hits the window. Because if we don't listen, if we don't hear it early on, if we don't gain an ear for it, we're going to miss the message, and it's going to keep getting, you're going to find yourself on the wrong path. You're going to find yourself on the wrong road. You're going to find yourself way left of center. And the measurement between the point where you are and the point where you should be is going to be a lot of suffering. And that was true for me. And I think that's what the cycle of lessons unlearned provides for us, right? There is a knock at the window. It's a little pebble trying to get our attention. And that pebble becomes a bigger rock. And that bigger rock becomes a brick. And if we're really not paying attention, one day we look out that window and what do we see? We see flaming boulders in catapults getting ready to be thrown at our proverbial homes. Make no mistake. Now, I don't care where you think these messages come from. I just know they come. For me, spirit. I think it's a message from your soul. I think it's a message from the universe. You can call it God, whatever you want to call it. But it acts like karma, right? Because if we're not listening, it just comes back, and it keeps getting bigger, and it keeps getting harder, and we keep getting deeper. And that point between those pain points, it keeps getting longer and more arduous. The Lakota Sioux, they have an image for, these roads. And one's the red road and one's the black road. And the black road is the road of external validation. The black road is the road of ego. The black road is the road I was on for sure, trying to exercise and anesthetize my pain and anesthetize my suffering through money and women and fame. The red road, on the other hand, was the road that I think that old man was pointing to, and that's the road of connection, heart-centered connection to self, connection to maybe a higher power, for me, spirit, and connection to authenticity. And I think when you're on the red road, as it were, everything becomes a mirror. Everything becomes a guru. Everything becomes a teacher if you decide to see it that way, right? And this is the way I like to look at my life, that everyone and everything I come in contact with is a mirror, a guru, a teacher, and it's sending me a message and it's sending me a lesson. And the more I see my life this way, the more interesting things get. I think it's essential that we meet our growing edges. I think we find personal growth and development happens because growing edge moments, when we find out we're in the wrong spot and we have to get to the other pain point, it encourages self-awareness and continuous improvement, and it allows individuals to discover and develop new skills. But it also helps us develop a level of resilience, right? There is, in facing challenges and facing difficult and winding circuitous roads in our lives, it builds resilience and it builds adaptability. And I don't think there is anyone that you, not even knowing you, but there's no one that we revere. There's no one that we look up to that has not been through it, right? The people that we really revere and really look up to in life are the people who have been through it. And I feel like when we really seek to meet the growing edge with vigor and with bravery, there's a level of fulfillment. Engaging with our growing edge, it leads to deeper sense of fulfillment, a deeper sense of purpose, and this happens. This sense of purpose and fulfillment happens when we are going for our passions. And typically, the growing edge shows us our passions. I think your passion, my wife says this, our passion is really just a message from your soul. So I think it's absolutely essential on every front for us to look, seek, find, and hear the growing edge when it tries to show itself, especially in the early stages. But what you get from meeting your growing edge is really interesting. I think you get your breakthroughs and your breakdowns. Because finding myself in the wrong career, finding myself married to the wrong person, as lovely as she was, that's a breakdown. Knowing that you have some road to cover, knowing that you have some place to get, that's a breakdown. I would not trade I would not wish what I went through during that time in my life. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. I also would not trade what I got from it for the world. Why? Because I got my breakthrough and my breakdown. I got the treasure that was in that cave. And this is when, that old adage, life stops happening to us and starts happening for us. When we meet our growing edges, our life stops happening to us and starts happening for us. But the question really begs to be asked, like, how do we do this? How is it that we are able to listen and find our growing edges? And it becomes really, really difficult because we often overlook the growing edge. We overlook our growing edge because we live in a culture, in a society that is hell-bent on and excels at teaching us how to numb out, teaching us how to not look at the hard things. We want to disconnect. We've been taught to stabilize our misery through, endless props and countless addictions and things that just sort of steal our attention. Essentially, we armor up to the thing we need the most when it comes to our growing edges, because we become prone to missing these growing edges in the early stages because of it's hard, we don't wanna, and we're also being shown a lot of shiny stuff, right? We're like squirrels, like, what? Shiny shit. Go look over there. But growth edge, it starts with a gentle whisper. Again, that rock against the window. It's the safe wake-up call, typically, when if we can hear it early on, that eventually becomes a smack in the face. If we aren't listening, it becomes quite dangerous. And so the point to all this is you have to be able to find your growing edge. How do you do that? You have to gain an ear for and to begin to listen to your life, right? And maybe you don't know how to do that. What does that mean? Listening to your life. I tell my clients, look no further than the timeline of your life, right? Let's take a 60,000 foot view of your life and look at all the notable moments, all the relationships, all the breakups, all the breakthroughs, all the breakdowns, and we find symmetry, right? If we can find symmetry, and we will find symmetry if you take a look from that 60,000 foot view of your life, and you'll find out, I broke up with that person for precisely the same reason that I left that job. And I left that job and broke up with that person because of the thing that happened back at home with mom and dad. There are symmetries to be seen and connections to be found if we're looking. Problem is, most of us aren't looking. Another way we can find our growing edges is to look at what I call the buckets of our lives, right? My life is sort of broken up into buckets: the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, personal, professional buckets. These are areas of my life that I've sort of broken down. I need to pay attention to these areas of my life. These are the most important ones, right? The mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the personal and professional. If any one of those areas, or one of the important areas of your life, isn't firing, something's not happening that needs to happen, you're probably looking at a growing edge moment. And it's incumbent upon us to stop, push pause, and ask hard questions. Get help, get a coach, get a therapist, get whatever it is that you need to begin to pay attention to that little knock at your window, gaining that ear, learning to listen to that whisper so that your growing edge does not become a gaping wound. One of the ways we can start out is to start with stretch goals, right? Add 5 more pounds to the weight, so to speak, right? Do little things that require you to stretch in a particular direction. Start having difficult conversations. Start entertaining hard choices. Seek feedback is another. Seeking feedback is a tough one for most people. Harvard Business School just did a study recently, or came out with an article recently that said that people would prefer to just guess at what their supervisors and bosses want from them rather than to actually go to them and ask. And I found that to be a mind-blowing thing. I worked in the restaurant industry for 100 years prior to becoming a licensed therapist. I used to go and ask my bosses, much to their chagrin, for a quarterly review. Not a yearly, not 6 months, quarterly. Why? Because I didn't want anything to sneak up on me. I wanted to know what it was they expected. Look, there's a difference between expectations, right? We have Eastern expectations and Western expectations. In the West here, we have these expectations that fire here as an example. If the thing we're dealing with fires here and misses our expectations, this is the arbitrary measure of our suffering. And so really understanding what is expected of us and being able to meet those expectations requires us to possibly look at a growing edge, take on constructive feedback, right? Hear things that perhaps we don't want to hear. I like to say we are often looking at information that we might not want, but it's information that we absolutely need. And that's what feedback offers us. And this requires us to embrace discomfort, right? Actively seeking experiences that challenge us, having difficult conversations, seeking feedback, pushing ourselves in any way will often require that we embrace discomfort. And again, we are a culture that has sort of made it our bread and butter to not embrace discomfort. If you think about just the myriad of drugs that we can take to mitigate any sort of suffering that we might have, some suffering is pretty good. Some suffering we need. We've pathologized our feelings in this culture, but embracing discomfort is a growing edge. We need to be able to lean into fear. And that is not a lesson that most of us particularly like. We want to be comfortable. But I'm telling you right now, this is coming from both personal and professional experience, having worked with thousands and thousands of people at this particular point, if we don't gain a muscle for leaning into the fear and pushing back, we're never going to learn anything. Our lives are not going to be full of meaning. We're going to feel useless. But lastly, the way we can find our growing edge, and the thing I think is most important in looking at our growing edge, are 4 questions. 4 questions that I ask all my clients, and these are the core 4. These are the big ones. These are the things that no one's talking about, but everyone should be talking about. These questions are, and as I ask them to you, I ask that you feel about them, less than think about them if you can. Feel into your body. Were you loved? Were you safe? Were you enough? And did you matter to someone? I'll ask him again. Were you loved? Were you safe? Were you enough? And did you matter to someone? You see, I believe, and I'm not the only one that believes this, contemplative family therapy would argue the same, that when we come through the gates of life, we're coming through the gates of life having been promised something, right? There's an idea that's woven into the fabric of our nervous systems, into the fine fibers of our skin and bone, that says you were promised something. When 2 people endeavor to make a person, you were promised something. And in all of my research in my book, The Practice of Love, and all the time I've worked with people, I've come up with those 4. that we need to know that we are loved, safe, enough, and that we matter. And those are the things that we're actually looking for. These are the things that we're actually fighting for at the core of everything in our lives. And if you're not looking at these, you're missing it. You're skimming off the top. Little babies, when they come through the gates of life, they are looking up and we think, oh, look at that. They're just taking everything in. They're not. They're asking these questions. They're asking, am I going to be loved here? Am I going to be safe here? Will someone show me that I'm enough? Will I matter to someone? And we continue asking these questions from a very core place, from an unconscious place. We ask our parents. We ask our extended families. We ask our communities as we grow through the formative years of our lives. We ask these questions. Am I loved? Am I safe? Am I enough? And do I matter? And I can tell you, if one or more of these questions is not answered in the positive for you, in the affirmative, if somewhere along the line you were not loved, you didn't feel like you were safe in the world, that you weren't enough, that you didn't matter, you've got a core wound and you have a cave you got to go into. I can tell you that enough and matter, those were mine. I am a white man in America, as you can see. That's one we get, enough. We're never enough. We are never enough. That's the secret. Like a lot of guys watching this, and if your partner's watching this, you're like, I don't know what his is. Well, I'll tell you what, it's enough. The pile of money's never big enough. The car's never nice enough. The boat's not big enough. I'm telling you, we are never enough. That's the one we carry. I'm not trying to, play a little violin here. It's just the one we get. So if you're having a hard time figuring yours out, and you are not just a white man, a man in America, just a man in America, you're never enough. And so mine was, I was never enough, and I didn't matter. And so I went through, that's what got me on that. That's what got me on the wrong road. Not being enough. It made me consciously make terrible choices, or wrong choices, or inappropriate choices that took me further and further down a path that I didn't need to be on. And it wasn't until I recognized that and that I went in and dared to brave the cave and go in that I actually got the treasure. And you know what? Come to find out, the treasure doesn't live anywhere other than here, inside of me. Life is a circle, I think. Everything, it's not a straight line going off into some distant, horizon line. Life is a circle, and everything that you come in contact with circles you back, bringing you closer if you ask the right questions and you're answering the right questions, and if you're looking at everything as a mirror, as a guru, as a teacher. It all comes back to self. It all comes back to your intrinsic goodness. Looking into the mouth of the cave and being bold enough to brave it, that's the stuff. That's why we're here. And so, if you choose to do it, I applaud you. That's all I have for today. That's all I have for your growing edge, your perilous potential. Perilous because it's going to scare the shit out of you. Potential because, man, there's a shit ton of treasure down that cave. Good luck to you. Reach out if you need something. Like and subscribe. That's a new thing for me. Like and subscribe. Yeah. My kids tell me, you need subs, Dad. You need subs. All right. Subs. Hope I get subs.